5 rings. I have 4 sisters. My mom has always been mean and neglectful of me, only me. I'm older now and recognize her lame attempts at making me feel less than. Taking away her power of it now makes me smile. She still always tries to cut me down and keep me separated from my siblings. My mom, classic hoarder, got her claws into an elderly woman whom has no family. Mom has acquired gold, rings, etc. from this 91-year-old old woman. Pat had 5 heirloom rings she wanted my mom Debbie to give one to each of us, girls, since she has no family to pass things on to. There was a plan to hand out the rings to us when we were all together. Super Bowl one of my sis couldn't make it, so the rings weren't handed out since we weren't all there. 2 weeks later a brunch is planned for a day that I'm slammed. I have 4 kids to take to 2 separate softball practices I coach. There's no way I can make this brunch and get 4 kids to practice by 1030. They all still go to brunch. Later in our group chat I see my mom post Pat's contact card and tell everyone to mail a thank you letter to Pat. I wrote thank you for what? And a sis writes back the rings. I ask why they were given out when I wasn't there. My mom hates when I show people how she treats me instead of just staying quiet. Mom responds, you should have been there. When my mom gets busted doing shady stuff to me, she never wants anyone to know, so she will always private message me and try to get me off the chat so she can bully me. Debbie wants to appear one way to groups people, so responds to me individually so she can be mean with no one seeing it. Sure enough, I get an instant message off the thread Debbie asking if I'm home so she can drop off whatever ring is left. Ha, no thanks, black heart. I'm good. Having the contact card that Debbie posted, I pick up my phone and call Pat and explain who I am. She knows I'm one of Debbie's kids, as my mom will always talk about her 6 kids, but people outside of my siblings don't know how I'm treated by Debbie. Pat and I chat for a while and she's a lovely, old, lonely southern woman. I tell her thank you for giving all my sisters rings, that it was very sweet. She said she was so happy to give them to us as she has no one and is getting very old. She asked about my ring, which one I chose. Here's where I told Pat everything. That I didn't get a ring, that my mom is terrible to me both growing up and now. I wanted Pat to know the truth for the next time Debbie calls her trying to act like a saint. Pat says she hopes she can be there for me to atone for my mother's shortcomings. I tell Pat that I'm not only okay and perfectly happy, but a minimalist and don't want anything. The only thing I wanted was to talk and say thank you. I felt so good talking to her. I jumped right back in the group chat and told everyone that I had just gotten off the phone with Pat. You can bet the farm that Debbie's blood went cold reading that I, the mistake child, had called Pat. Debbie, rattled I'm sure, wrote back quickly in GC saying maybe you should wait to call until you have something to say. Like wait to call her until after I have a ring to thank her for? All I responded in the group chat was already called. Thanks, heart. A certain parking slot in a busy street is reserved for visitors of a particular shop. No worries. As the heading says, I was looking for a parking slot for a quick 10-minute errand. I see a visibly open parking slot which I park in only for the security guard to inform me that it is reserved solely for visitors of a particular shop. No worries. I tell him I am visiting the shop, enter the shop and exit immediately before proceeding to complete my errands. Malicious compliance. AITA for asking my niece to stop speaking French around my dyslexic wife. My wife 28F Sarah and I am 30 have been married for 5 years. She's incredible, loving, and my favorite person in the world. Now, my entire family has tradition of learning and speaking French. It's always been a fun way for us to bond. However, for Sarah, it's been a bit of a challenge. Sarah has tried for years to pick up the language, but due to her dyslexia, she's found it extremely difficult. It's been a great source of frustration and insecurity for her, especially when we're around my family who like to speak French with each other. My niece 17F, Eva, is staying with us for a while. She speaks English and French too, and understandably, speaks a lot of French around the house. While I understand it's just a normal thing, for her, it's been a bit upsetting for Sarah. She feels excluded from our conversations and she's started trying to brush up on it, but it's just stressing her out and hitting a nerve. Given the situation, I approached Eva and asked if she could try to speak more English around my wife. I explained that it wasn't about controlling her choices but about helping Sarah feel more comfortable and included in conversations. Unfortunately, Eva didn't take it well. She accused me of prioritizing Sarah's difficulties over her comfort, and claimed that I was asking her to suppress her identity. I'm not sure if I handled it the right way. AITA for asking Eva to stop speaking French around Sarah? AITA for excluding my wife's friend from trips solely because we think she is annoying? Maybe not as dramatic as other situations here, but here goes. My M31 wife F30 has a friend, we'll call her Dana F34, They have been friends for a little more than 10 years, and it's important to note that the only friend Dana has is my wife. For the sake of the post, I'll call her Laura. Dana has always had difficulties making and keeping friends. This is because she's a classical one-upper. If you tell her about a vacation you hadn't enjoyed, she'll tell you it's nothing compared to her last vacation. You're going through a bad time? Well, it's nothing compared to what she's going through and stuff like that. Since her only friend is Laura, I got to hang out with her a lot. I don't like her and don't consider her a friend, but I am civil to her. Laura has tried to integrate Dana to another group of friends of ours for a few years now, but it not going well. The breaking point was one night when we were drinking, and a friend opened up about losing a beloved pet, and Dana responded by saying it was nothing compared to when she lost a blouse her mother had given her last year. After that, some people wouldn't hang out if she was coming in. So, now to the issue. We're planning a week-long camping trip along with 2 more friends and their spouses. Of these friends, only one of them has met Dana. Laura thinks this might be a good chance for Dana to meet new people, so she suggested we invite her. I was obviously against it. I get tired just imagining a week with her and told her so. So, she knows I'm not a fan of hers but is hoping I will help her improve her social skill, but I don't think our vacation should be her opportunity. We fought a little and didn't solve anything. Here is why I think I could be an asshole. I continue planning the trip, and every time Laura told me to invite Dana, I would just tell her I'll do it once all is set up. I had no intention in doing so. Anyway, the trip is a few weeks away, and last Saturday the cat was out of the bag about me not wanting Dana to come. Laura argues that being annoying is no reason to exclude her, and if she needs to improve her social skills, we should be helping her. I obviously disagree, but I have never seen Laura this angry, so I'm doubting myself. So am I the asshole? AITA for going to a therapist to discuss my difficulties with being pregnant for the first time while a stepmom. I 30F got married 4 years ago to James 32 meters. James has 2 children with his ex. My stepson is 10 and my stepdaughter is 9. I love my stepchildren and I try to be a good stepmom. Not the crazy evil kind or the kind who wants the kids all to herself and tries to screw over the biological parent. I see my role as being an additional adult in their lives who contributes to their security, but I don't believe I am an equal parent. They don't see me that way, and that is totally fine and lines up with my experiences with friends who had step-parents even from very young ages. I dated James knowing he had children, and I always wanted to be one of the step-parents who the kids were glad to have in their lives, not the ones tolerated for the sake of their parent. My husband's family do not have these same expectations, and during my pregnancy I have struggled with that. To my eels, I am an equal parent. I am a third-time parent, and not pregnant for the first time. This has been a difficult expectation for me. I feel like my whole pregnancy has been compared the ex's pregnancies with my stepchildren. Some comments get made by Mill and Phil like, oh, the other 2 weren't that bad because I had such extreme morning sickness that led to a hyperemesis gravidarum. Or when we found out the sex of the baby and it was mentioned we didn't find out with my stepchildren. My husband told them it wasn't like I was involved in either of those pregnancies, but it went over their heads. My sisters suggested throwing me a baby shower, and it was mentioned by Mill that you only have a baby shower with your first, and how inappropriate one for the third will be. She said people would judge so harshly for that decision. This has weighed on me. It makes me feel jealous, which is new, and I wallowed for a while in how unfair it is that my husband went through this twice before, and it means his family expect me to give up first-time experiences like a baby shower, or that they compare my pregnancy to his ex's 2 pregnancies. I was worried it would make me a worse stepmom feeling that way, and so I started therapy. My husband and I did talk a little, but he couldn't completely understand how I felt. He told me it wasn't bad to feel a little unsettled by the comments and he would do better to end them, but I told him I did not want that jealousy to fester and grow, or for it to become resentment toward him or my stepkids. So I started therapy 6 weeks ago. My husband was so frustrated with his family starting all this that a week ago when they made another comment about the baby shower, he told them it was that shit that sent me to therapy. They asked what that was supposed to mean, and he told them they made me feel like shit for experiencing my first pregnancy, and he was over how they respond to my pregnancy. This started an argument between him, his mom and his brother, and then my husband's family claimed I was weaponizing therapy and overreacting to a situation I signed up for. AITA for making an autistic joke. At a drama rehearsal, I, 15M, made a joke to my friend, 15F. We're both autistic. I was given a tie that was a clip-on, and as a joke I said, "Look, a tie for us sped people." And a fellow kid's mother interrupted us. We were laughing, saying you shouldn't joke like that. I work with autistic kids. I appreciate her standing up for autistic kids. I really do. But I am autistic, and I'm allowed to make self-depreciating jokes. So, I very politely responded, "Oh, I'm actually autistic. And she replied, well, you still shouldn't be joking like that. I feel that's very untrue. I'm allowed to make jokes about myself. But I simply didn't reply. I had just met her. I think it's super weird, because if I said for dumb blondes, she wouldn't have been like, I teach blonde kids actually. Like, I know I'm not the worst of the worst on the spectrum, but I am special ed. So, AITA for making my wife cry several times over work. Sorry for poor English. I am not smart. I 27M have made my wife 27F cry constantly over her being willing unemployed for over 4 months. She left her last job because it was, in her terms, making her stressed. It was a 3-day-a-week, 18 hours job. She earned $600 WK odd. We have a joint home loan at $370K remain and our savings are sinking. I told her I was in support of her leaving her job under the one condition that she had more work lined up, even if it paid less. She instead quit the week after I said it. 3 months passed and she had no job still. Bills coming in constantly and I had taken up extra shifts to cope. But in all of this, the savings we have are dropping. Last month I started tell her she needs to find work and she comes up with a different excuse each time. I broke down the home loan repayments and explained how we can't afford them if she doesn't work and that we are unable to be anything other than essentials, and she seems to understand. After a week I asked if she had applied to any jobs and she said no. I blew up, yelled and told her she is being extremely unfair as I am working overtime and have little free time, whereas she doesn't even keep the home in order outside of doing dishes and laundry when I tell her to. This repeats weekly. Today when I noticed she was a bit upset, I asked, what's wrong, and she said she wanted me to spend time with her. I have 1 day off a week and I said I could have more free time if you were working. She said you don't care about my feelings, you just want me to get a job, and I yelled at her for letting me handle all financial responsibility again. She argues that she applied for 6 jobs but they all asked for ID checks and she wasn't bothered to do them. I am very angry. I told her I am not her money pig and she can get work or we're done. AITA for mentioning I didn't like getting funeral wear for Christmas. Sadly, I had to go to a funeral in November. I remarked at the time that I really should get a black tie sometime. Then on Christmas morning I unwrapped my present, and yep, my wife bought me a black tie. I have to be honest, it made me sad to think about funerals on Christmas morning, but hey, I bought her perfume, a necklace and a nice jacket I knew she liked. Today I mentioned that it made me sad and now she's really huffing with me like crazy, really upset at my ungratefulness. AITA for not adapting to the schedule of the daughter of the guy I'm dating. I have 30 started dating this divorced guy. I am 30 a month ago. I am child free and I never want kids, but the fact that he has an 8-year-old daughter doesn't bother me. The thing is, I have never dated men with children before, so I am not used to adapting to children's schedules. I can't be around when he goes see her, so we can only see each other when he's not with her, which is usually on the weekends. I don't mind this. Sometimes this schedule changes and he sees her during the weekdays, and I'm also okay with it. The thing is, I hinted that I wanted to see him X day, but I never said I will see you X day. Turns out I actually can't go to his house that day, so I said sorry, it will have to be the following day. Now he says I'm an asshole because he had to change his whole schedule of seeing his daughter because of me, and I'm canceling last minute. I didn't know this. I asked if he could see his daughter X day instead, which made it worse. I'm not used to kids. I had no idea he'd change his schedule for me. Am I an inconsiderate asshole for not thinking about this? Edit: the reason I cancelled is because I have an important gym class that I don't want to miss. I didn't think it was a big deal. We aren't even serious yet. He lives 30 minutes away. The class would finish at 10 p.m. We'd just see each other for a couple of hours and then it's again a 30 minutes drive for me. I honestly didn't assume nor ask him to change his schedule for me. I thought his daughter was more important than meeting me for a couple of hours. Edit: to his child should come first. He didn't even inform me he had rescheduled. AITA for not allowing my daughter to significantly alter my wedding dress. My 44F daughter 25F is getting married later this year to her girlfriend 27F. 27F I have always dreamed of walking her down the aisle. My husband passed when she was a child, and she enjoyed talking about a future wedding and playing bride when she was a child, picking flowers and colors in venues. She loved watching the videos of my wedding and seeing me and her father get married, and it was important in our bonding. When she was 13 I promised her my wedding dress. However, her clothing style is more manly. She began refusing to wear dresses or skirts when she was in her late teens, even trying to demand her school allow her to wear trousers. And it was difficult convincing her to wear dresses to formal events. She has gone through phases of wanting short hair, wanting to be a boy, and getting tattoos. I have always been very supportive of all of this, even when she met her girlfriend and proposed to her. I have encouraged her as much as I can. I am contributing significantly to the wedding. I recently called and asked her when she wanted me to bring over the dress, as it would likely need slight alterations, and she dropped the bombshell on me that she wanted to wear a suit and have my wedding dress altered to remove the skirt portion so that the bodice could be worn with trousers. At first I agreed but dragged my feet bringing the dress over. After a few weeks I changed my mind and told her that the dress was important to me and I didn't want her to ruin it. When I promised her the dress, it was because I thought she would wear it as a dress, and she will only get to wear it if it is a dress. I offered that her girlfriend could wear it as a dress instead, but my daughter said that would still be ruining it. Her girlfriend is a much larger woman than me, so it would need more altering, and has since not been answering my messages except with saying that the dress would be a connection to her dad, so she is disappointed not to have it. I offered to go dress shopping with her for a replacement, but apparently some of our family think I am stopping her having the dress because I disagree with her being masculine. AITA for telling her she can have it as a dress or not have it at all. I may be the asshole because I promised it to her, but that was when she was very young and before I knew she wanted to change it. AITA for not letting a guy sit next to his family on a flight. I-22F was on a flight yesterday and noticed someone in my seat. A man 40s? M was sitting next to his wife and daughter. I kindly asked him to move as he was sitting in the seat. I specifically booked and paid more for I'm mostly comfortable sitting in aisle seats. He refused to move and told me to move to his seat, which was a middle seat. I told him I don't do middle seats, and he got mad, telling me over and over again that he was sitting next to family and that the airline had messed up his seating. A flight attendant came over and forced him to move to his seat. Here's why I feel like the asshole. It was a very short flight, less than 2 hours, and his daughter looked really sad that her dad wouldn't be sitting near, even though she had her mother sitting there with her. They were also giving me dirty looks throughout the whole flight. So, am I the asshole? AITA for not letting my daughter use my son's PS5. For Christmas, I bought a PS5 for my son 17, since he has been asking for one for months. My daughter 14 is always jealous of her brother. She is very greedy and always wants what her brother has. In this case, she wants the PS5. She insists we let her use it, but I told her no. It's your brother's and he doesn't want to share, so he shouldn't have to. She started nagging, saying it's unfair and we should buy a PS5 for her then, but we can't afford 2 PS5s, so now she won't talk to anyone and thinks we are assholes. AITA for not letting my sister come stay with me. My sister 19F and I 21F don't have the greatest relationship ever. I find my sister entitled, spoiled and selfish, and she finds me selfish and unforgiving. We always had a very tense relationship. Our parents started it by babying her as the youngest and treating us very differently, while also expecting us to be BFFs and to do everything and share everything. My sister has no regard for me at all. A few times when we were teens, the heating went in our parents' house and I was lucky to have the warmer room outside my parents. My sister expected me to swap rooms with her so she could be warm and I would sleep in the cold. When I told her she could sleep in my room with me if she wanted to, she told me I should give her my bed and go to hers. Another time I was sick, flew in home from school for 2 weeks. My parents were at a wedding one Saturday and told her to get me to drive her to her friend's house for a concert they were attending. I told her I couldn't bring her because, you know, sick as fuck on the couch and barely able to keep my eyes open. She pestered me for the best part of 2 hours and yelled at me for messing with her life and said I was so selfish for not making her plans a priority. There was other pettier stuff from our childhood, like how angry she'd get that she couldn't steal my makeup since mine didn't work for her skin, or how she'd be mad when I bought a lock for much closet so she couldn't take my clothes without asking me. When I moved out and into my own apartment for college with 2 friends and my family came to visit, my sister decided she was inviting herself for an extended stay and wanted me to sleep in one of my friend's rooms or something since she decided she could stay. I refused to let her stay and she told me I was being a bitch. I told her she could say goodbye to whoever staying with me. My parents told me I could have let her stay. I told them they could also leave and I not so gently encouraged that. My sister went to college in a different state, was in a dorm for her freshman year, but now she's a sophomore and was living with some people she met in her college, but they wanted her out and refused to let her stay there anymore. My sister didn't take it seriously until she was forced to leave, and with her last few dollars she decided to take a bus and show up at my apartment saying she was staying with me for well, because she was homeless and I needed to give her my room. She actually used the words, "You can take the couch for a few weeks." I refused to let her come in and I refused to let her stay. She freaked out about having no more money and nowhere else to go. I told her it wasn't my problem. She cursed me out over DMs and told me I was the worst sister and I'm so selfish for turning her away again. She also accused me of being unforgiving if this is about the last time I wanted to stay. My parents also started, so I blocked them. AITA AITA for not telling my dad's guests that I marinated the chicken with milk. It was my 18 meters dad 43's birthday. He wanted me to cook for him and some friends, and I said yes. Met some of them before. One of his friends is also my GF18's dad. I did what my mom taught me, use milk to make the chicken tender. A couple of them were surprised that I managed to cook roasted chicken well. I told them thanks. I just marinated with milk to make it tender, and one of them panicked. Turns out he has milk allergy and gets digestive issues. My dad started berating me, saying I should have told them ahead of time that I was using milk to check if anyone is allergic. That it was careless of me not to check first when milk is a common allergy. AITA for not wanting my partner's friends to join us for a drink. My girlfriend have been together for just under 3 years now. We had a table booked at a restaurant we both like, and then a couple of cocktail bars booked. The night was going really well. We'd had the meal and were at the first cocktail bar. A group of my girlfriend friends enter the bar. They're already quite drunk and they come over and offer us a drink. My girlfriend looks at me but I politely decline. They ask again and says it's only a drink. And I just repeat what I had already said. I mention it's supposed to be a date with you, the two of us. My girlfriend says it can't hurt to have one drink with them. But I remind her it's supposed to be a date night for us. She just says she doesn't see the problem with one drink, but I point out the likelihood is they wouldn't leave after one and that the night was supposed to be just the two of us. I suggest leaving after the current drink and going to the next bar, but my girlfriend says she just wants to go home. We leave together and she accused me of ruining the date, but I disagree and point out it was supposed to be our date, not a catch up with friends. She just repeated that I was wrong for not agreeing to just have one drink with them, but I just said I didn't really just want to sit there while my girlfriend catches up with friends during our date. AITA for not wanting my girlfriend friend to join us when we're on a date. AITA for not wearing a bra to my friend's wedding. I 23F have small boobs. You can't tell if I'm wearing a bra or not in most tops, so when I can, I don't wear a bra as I find them uncomfortable. My friend Kate 25F is getting married and asked me to be a bridesmaid. I accepted and then she texted me privately to ask if I could wear a bra for her wedding as she doesn't want me to flash someone. I tried explaining to her that the bridesmaid dress she had picked out had full sleeves so you wouldn't be able to tell as the material is also very thick. Kate got really mad at me and my sister said, maybe I should just suck it up and wear a bra. I just find it to be a weird invasive question, as you literally can't tell if I had a bra on in the first place or not in that dress, and I'm sure no one over there is staring at my chest. AITA for refusing to share money I will be given have access to at 18 with my stepsister and half-brother. I 17 will be coming into a large amount of money when I turn 18. This is money that my mom, who died when I was 7, and my maternal grandparents accumulated for me since I was born. I won't say the exact amount, but it's between $500,000 and $1 million. The reason it's that much is my grandparents ran a successful business for many years, and they sold it 18 months ago, and all money from that sale went to me. They kept none of it. My grandparents have control over all of it currently. Before my mom died, she left them in charge of the account where she was saving. She was married to my dad at the time but had wanted to secure my future in case anything happened, like dad remarrying and having additional kids. She didn't want to run the risk that once she was gone her money could be used for someone who wasn't her kid. My dad knew some money had been saved for me by mom but was never aware of how much or little it was. He also had no idea my grandparents continued saving for me. My grandparents told me about the money over a year ago. They wanted me to prepare for my future and to know I would have so many options because of the money available to me. They also mentioned it never bringing back my mom, but could alleviate the burden of becoming an adult. So here's the deal. My dad did remarry. He has a stepdaughter 16 and a son 5 with his current wife. They are not wealthy and my dad's wife has prepared her daughter to try and work hard for scholarships and financial aid to get into college, because she wants to study to become a lawyer. I think my dad had similar conversations with me and had sat me down a few times since I learned of the money's existence to figure out what our plans would be. Eventually I told him it wasn't going to be a big concern and I told him about the money. He was like WTF, and then he told his wife and they apparently went WTF together and told me I could be gracious and split the money when I get it between the three of us and give the other two a chance to have a decent helping hand with college. I told them I would not be sharing it because it was created by my family, not theirs. Dad's wife argued that it would be incredibly selfish to take such a large amount of money and blow it all on myself when I have two siblings who could also benefit in major ways from it. My dad told me even giving some of it to them, not a full split, but some money, money I have left at the end would be amazing and would help my family out a lot. I told him I wasn't going to. They are so not happy with me. They told me that being selfish with this is not a good way to be. My dad is also pissed that he continued saving for me and diving things equally between the three of us when I have so much I'll have access to in a few months. AITA for rejection my niece's adoption request in front of people. My niece 14 has lived with me since her parents went to prison 5 years ago. Drugs. My sister is getting out later this year. She has been working very hard in prison to improve herself and got her GED. We are still very close and we talk via an app the prison provides, and I take her daughter to visit her, along with her brother, who lives with his dad's brother, once a month. We were having a birthday dinner at my mother's for myself and my daughter, 16. Most of my family was there. For my present, my niece decided to give me adoption request papers or whatever they are. I never ended up reading them. I was stunned and just shook my head. I was so shocked and confused. The plan was she was always supposed to go home. My mother was upset by this request as well as my other siblings, and my husband couldn't think of what to do either. She never brought this up in counseling or anything. I can't do that to my sister. I would not be able to take care of her without support financially from my grandma, who would stop supporting if I agreed. This was never even a thought. Now she and my daughter hate me, it seems. My son, 21, said it was probably something she got from TikTok and she will eventually get over it. My husband agrees with me. My siblings are staying out of it. My nephew isn't speaking to his sister now. It's a mess. AITA here, trying to get an outside opinion. Reddit seems as good a place as any. AITA for ruining a baby name. I am Brazilian, but I've been living in the US for 3 years. My first language is Portuguese. I have a 4-year-old son, and I'm pregnant with a girl due in May. My son is friends with a girl whose mother, I'll call her Becca, is also pregnant. She's due a couple weeks before me, and is also expecting a third girl. Since we take our kids on playdates almost weekly, we frequently talk about our pregnancies. Becca is into unique names. Not uniques or tragedies, but names that she and her husband create. It's not my style, but she managed to come up with genuinely nice names, both her older daughters, so there was never really a reason for me to say anything. This time, Becca and her husband had a lot of trouble coming up with a new name. She first brought this up last December. For months, they'd try to create something that sounded good, with no success. We took our kids on a playdate at a park this weekend. When we sat down for a snack, Becca excitedly told me they'd finally settled on a name. I was really happy for her, and asked what they'd chosen. Narina. To those who don't know, that's Portuguese for nostril. I managed to control myself, and told her it sounded lovely. But my son let out a giggle. My husband and I are raising him bilingual, so he speaks Portuguese, and Becca wanted to know why. I tried to brush it off, but she kept insisting. Eventually, I told her that while Narina could be a lovely name, it was also the Portuguese word for nostril. Becca seemed really sad to hear that. She said she'd think of something else, but had fallen in love with Narina. After we went home, Becca's husband called me. He was furious at me for ruining the only name they had agreed on. Apparently, he had a fight with Becca because she told him she wanted to think of something else. He argued they'd never visit Brazil anyway, so they shouldn't have to change the name, but Becca refused to use Narina. My husband agrees that their fight is not my fault, but thinks I didn't need to tell Becca anything, since Americans are unlikely to know what Narina means. AITA X200B edit. This was not my son's fault. He is 4 years old and had an honest reaction to hearing a baby would essentially be named Nostril. I get that some people might think I was but don't blame my child for this. AITA for staying with my dad after my son cut up my pictures of my deceased mother. I'm a 28F married to my husband, 34M, and have a son who is 9. I had a rough childhood and my mom, who I loved very much, passed away when I was 16 due to addiction. I don't have many things from her besides some jewelry, but I've always had a photo book filled with her college and later in life photos. I'm going through another weird second wave of grief right now. In life, just missing her often, especially now that I'm in therapy. My son sees me crying a lot and my husband wanted me to explain things to him because he seemed confused. So I did. I explained everything to him one night before bedtime and we looked through the old photo book together and it was one of my most beautiful moments in life. 2 days ago I came to his room to get him for dinner and I saw the book on his desk, walked over and saw that he had taken pictures out of the book, cut them up and glued them to a piece of paper. All I could do was just stand there and say, "Oh shit." I tried really hard not to cry and immediately went downstairs to my husband and I told him about it. Started to cry. My son came in the kitchen. I was visibly upset and asked him why he would do that. He started to cry as well and told me he wanted to do an art project for me. I just walked out of the room, went to bed while my husband tended to him, and then packed a backpack and went to my dad's to spend the night. My husband is trying to give me space but keeps calling and overwhelming me. I told him I was upset at our kid and he defended him saying that it's just how he expressed himself and that I was overreacting and upsetting him. He said this is just what happens with kids but he can't understand that those photos were so special to me. He's all pissy with me now and I feel horrible and angry and just miserable. My dad is starting to feel angry at my husband now because of his behavior and is worried about me, but I just feel fucking guilty for upsetting my child. AITA for telling my granddaughter not everything is about you. Sit down and shut her mouth. This post is about my granddaughter 16. She has a bad attention issue. I have talked to the parents but they tell me she isn't doing anything wrong. One example, she was upset at someone's birthday party since they didn't have her favorite cake. Then the whole party made it a big deal, drawing everyone attention for the birthday boy to her. I have a lot of examples. In short, someone else's event and then she will have an issue and all attention will go to her. It's a problem and it has resulted in her not have many friends. I have heard about that issue a lot. Her younger brother got into the National Honor Society at school. We were having a congratulatory dinner for him. She started to tell the whole table of the injustice it was she don't get in. Multiple people tried to move the conversation away from it. Every time we got back to it being about her brother, she would start again. I told her stop multiple times. Her younger brother was getting frustrated. Her parents were not doing anything about it. I had enough. I pulled her aside, told her that not everything is about her, that she going to sit down and shut her mouth for the rest of the night. She was silent the rest of the night. My grandson thanked me for getting the party back on track. My daughter is pissed and told me I had no right to do this. She called me a jerk. I could be an ass for how I handled it even if it was justified. AITA for telling my mom I will move out versus paying $600 a month rent. I'm 25 years old, was paying $60 a week rent for a few years. I recently started a new temp job that pays pretty decent, and they decided to keep me with the company last week. This morning my mom texted me to say rent starts up again, $150 a week. I just told her I will move out. I already pay for my own meals. I only have my small bedroom to call my own in their house. I can rent a studio apartment 3 or 4 times the size of my room for a few hundred more, or could rent a room with friends for less than my mom is trying to charge me. It would be one thing if they cooked and cleaned for me every day and I was raking up their bills, but I do my own thing, pay my own bills. I never really even cross paths with my parents besides when I am getting off work. My mom's definitely pissed that I said that, I can tell. But I'm also upset the person who birthed me is trying to get me to pay what I would pay a landlord for rent just to sleep in her house. Even $100 a week I would have been more inclined to be okay with, but $600 a month just to be able to sleep at my parents' house seems a little high. If I am paying $600 a month, I think I would deserve my own spaces around the house also, as I would with a landlord. It seems having a landlord would be a better deal for me in this case. AITA for telling my sil to find another provider because I'm not it. My sil has always called me a disgrace and talked about how men are providers. She has repeatedly told me this and tried to shame me for having a better education and job than my husband. My husband family is Mexican immigrants and my sil lives in Mexico and has a Mexican husband. She recently fled the house looking for someone to stay with. My in-laws live in another state, but my sister with her 3 children came to us instead. We live in a small house in San Diego that was my grandma's. My in-laws live close to Houston. My husband was not home when his sister arrived and I sent her away when she showed up on my doorstep. I told her to go find another provider because I'm not it. My husband heard and came home from work and I told him that he had to pay for her hotel and plane tickets out of his money to our in-laws' place. He and his family have been pissed at me. His sister has constantly bullied me for over 10 years for dumbass things like not making my man a plate. I have never liked her or her ex. I do not want her in my home and I wasn't having it because she has no damn money because of her own stupidity of being a wifey. I refuse to support her and now my husband's family is saying he should leave me and stay in Houston. I told him he can choose his sister over me and if he's not back in 24 hours I'm throwing his shit on the street and letting the homeless take it. AITA for telling my wife our daughter will not be given a unique or weird hippie name. My wife 28F and I 30 meters are expecting a baby girl in March. We have not yet decided on a name and it's becoming worrying that we might not reach an agreement on what to call our daughter. We have very different ideas about what the name should be. My wife likes nothing too classic and normal like the names I have suggested: Elizabeth, Emily, Natasha, Hannah, Catherine, Francesca, Matilda, Annabelle, Isabel, Vivian, Sadie and many others. My wife has suggested some names I would consider far more modern and she likes unique and/or names I find very hippie: Sky, Indy, River, Ocean, Serafina, Atlas, Clove, Dove, Asteria, Lennox, Ember, Winter. We have thrown out hundreds if not thousands of names, and anytime I asked her why she dislikes any of the more known common classic names, she said she likes none of them. She either finds them boring or old-leaning, and she doesn't like that. I told her it would be better for our child to grow up with a name that sounds normal versus one made up to be unique. She told me she would never agree to a name like Elizabeth or Amelia, another name I suggested. I told her I will not agree to a unique or weird hippie name for our daughter. She told me it's why we're still looking, and I told her that the names of late have been worse from her. She told me the feeling is mutual and I am not going to force her to change her taste. She also told me my description of her names is unfair and there's nothing that unique about most of them, and I simply reject everything that's a little more modern leaning in usage. We took some time after that and have not returned to names in about 4 days. I can see she's bothered by my choice of words, but I can see she's also frustrated and feels our daughter's due date looming over us as well. AITA for thinking my sister was joking about her daughter's name. When my sister was pregnant with my niece, she told me they had decided on a baby name. She didn't want to share the name and told me she was worried they would change their minds because they struggled to agree on one. Then when she was about 7 or 8 months pregnant, she told me they had changed the name after she heard the name Cunley on TikTok. I thought for sure she was joking. She said her name would fit in so nicely with her cousins' names, my kids who are Meadow and Callum. I assumed she meant the real name would, and was like, oh okay in my head. But again, I 100 believed she was joking and had simply said that because she found the name ridiculous. When it continued after my niece was born 2 months ago, I started to wonder, but I assumed maybe they had changed their minds and were undecided on the actual name. It was my brother who spoke up and asked what was our niece's name for real. Our sister was like, it's Cuntley. How many times do you guys need to be told the name? He was like, yeah, we know you played that for a joke, but we want to start using her actual name. She asked me if I felt the same and I was like yes. She told us we were both assholes and that she continued saying Cuntley because that is her daughter's actual name. She said she thought about it a lot after seeing the TikTok and she talked her husband around. I was shocked, like really? And she told me I had no room to think she was joking when my daughter is Meadow. I told her the names are very different and she told me at least she never assumed I was joking. AITA for trying to get my son into an event that he's not invited to. My husband's cousin Amelia is getting married and is having a bridal shower in a few weeks. I was the only one in my household invited, so I assumed there were no kids invited, which is pretty standard. However, through a few family members, I came to find out that the girls in the family were invited but not the boys. Fine, I've heard of that before. However, my 2 sons 9 and 7 heard that their girl cousins were invited and my 7-year-old felt very left out. My 9-year-old Jake doesn't care and doesn't want to go anyway, but my 7-year-old Andrew is upset. He cried and asked if he could go. I reached out to my husband's Aunt Liz, who is hosting the shower, to see if an exception could be made for Andrew. She was nice about it but said that the reason they hadn't invited boys was because of venue limitations and also the theme diamonds. Our girl's best friend is very feminine. She said Amelia adores my boys but many of her friends have sons and she just can't accommodate them all. She was apologetic and I ended the conversation because it was awkward. However, Andrew is still upset and I'm thinking of reaching out to Liz again to see if an exception should be made. My husband thinks I need to let it go. AITA for withdrawing my new Dill's invite to a girls trip because of her shit talking. I have 2 sons, 2 Dills and 2 daughters. My youngest son got married recently and he reached out to me. He stated that Lindsay was feeling excluded from the family. I invited all the girls for a weekend girls trip, paid by me. I then asked my daughters to invite both Dills to a night out so everyone will be able to get to know each other better. I also plan to reach out to just hang out with her when work stops being awful. My husband also wanted to extend invites. The girls' night out was yesterday and all 4 were able to go. I got a call from my younger daughter this morning. She explains that they went to see a movie and then went to the bar. Lindsay started to shit talk about me. It wasn't pleasant. She insulted me a lot and basically said she doesn't want to go on the girl trip with an old cow. My daughter backed all this up with a video she took. My daughter also explained she doesn't want to be around someone that is two-faced. I asked if anyone else joined in. She told me no. My other Dill told her to stop and my oldest was pissed. I thought on it, and sent her a message informing her she is uninvited to the girls' trip, that I know her feelings about me and I think it's best we don't get closer. I also sent her the video. My son and her are pissed that I uninvited her. I have received a lot of excuses about it. They both are calling me jerks. She is going around spreading that she was uninvited and I am tempted to just send the video in the group chat. Edit. I am sending the video to my son. I wish to give him a chance to stop this before I drop it to everyone. I bought a non-traditional toy for my niece. So my niece had this lamb toy that she loved. I should also mention that she is really rough on toys, and long story short, the poor little fluffball has gone to stuffed animal heaven. Well, my niece was heartbroken and my sister was telling me how down she has been. So I thought I would get her another one. All of the stuffed lambs that I looked at were just as fragile as before. But when I was getting some treats for my pooch, I was struck by the sight of a lamb chop dog toy, and I had a brilliant idea. I mean, think about it. The lamb chop toy is made to be chewed on and clawed on, so it should be able to handle the abuse from a toddler. So I bought it, and on Saturday I was watching my niece for my sister and Bill. I gave my niece the toy and she loved it. She really liked the squeaker, too. So Saturday rolls around. Nieces have a blast with Lammy 2.0, and my sister and Bill walk in the door. Of course, my niece runs up to her parents and shows them her new toy. They ooh and ah over it until my niece squeezes them. My sister completely loses her crap, screams, "You bought my baby a dog toy." Bill just looks at me and tells me I should probably head home. The aftermath is that my sister sent me a bunch of texts which basically consist of "You bought her a dog toy," with some choice expletives thrown in for good measure. Our mom asked me what the hell was I thinking. Our stepfather and stepbrother thought it was funny as hell. Bill is quietly amused, but is keeping his head down. My sister took the lamb chop away and my niece had a meltdown until she gave it back. So now I am getting the double stink eye from her. And my niece still loves her fluffball. So AITA, I was just trying to make my niece happy. AITA M20 for not wanting my girlfriend F21 to post a TikTok making fun of me. My M20 girlfriend F21 and I were going out today and I saw a little bird that I thought was cute. I took out my phone and recorded it, telling my girlfriend how cute I think it is. She recorded me telling her that and recording the bird. She then posted the video on TikTok and wrote "new ick unlocked." I saw it and got mad at her because I don't like being made fun of like that. And she told me to relax because it is just a TikTok trend. I told her to take it down, but she didn't for a while. I got mad at her and she finally took it down, but called me a party pooper and is ignoring me. RN. AITA telling my daughter she has to understand that choosing this wedding date would result in my family not going. 2 years-ish ago, my brother, my nephew and my mother were in a car accident. My mother died instantly. My brother and nephew passed away the next day. My family was small: me, my husband, daughter, parents, brother, wife and 2 nephews. Edited. Their loss was devastating for my life and for everyone, even worse for my father and my sil. 1 year ago, my daughter, Betty 25F, was proposed by her fiancé and preparations began. During this process, they chose the date based on the day they met, added 7 years ago. And that day is exactly 2 years since the death of my brother and nephew. I tried to talk to her about moving, because it is still a very difficult date for our family and even for myself. But she insisted, saying that the venue had that date available and it would be perfect, because all the other available dates aren't so good and wouldn't be so important. I respected her decision. Recently, she sent the invitations to everyone and, as I predicted, my sil, my nephew 24M and my father responded that they would not attend, and despite not telling her, my father and sil told me that the date choice was sound and offense to them. I decided to remain neutral at some point. I confirmed my presence and my husband. Today my daughter called me unhappy that no one but us confirmed my husband doesn't have family on his side and her family part was empty. And she expected everyone to go on the date, even more so after she explained the reason to them about the date, but they still refused. I tried to be supportive, but I said, "Love, this date is difficult even for me, but I will go to your wedding. But you have to understand that this choice of date had this consequence, and you would have to deal with the consequences of your choices." She exploded at me, saying that everyone was against her. It's not her fault the dates coincided and everyone could make an effort to go a few hours for her, but they decided to just not go, and I was basically saying "I told you so." She hung up without me answering and we still haven't spoken. My husband said he understands me, but I should have stayed away from it. AITA? My roommate hates that I keep a small trash can in our shared bathroom. I've turned here to find out if I'm insane or not. Throwaway account. I 26TM have moved to a new city and have been friends with my now roommate 30M for a few years before making the move. Dude is great, keeps to his own spaces, respects how I handle training my dog. We split food and utilities without fuss. His mood and mine increased just having another human around. You know? Except I bleed once a week. Every month, I put a trash can in the bathroom to toss any period supplies as needed, as well as floss or air cleaners, tissues, etc. It has a liner that I replace often. It's tucked behind the mop, even so it's barely visible. I'm well enough passing that I guess he forgets that I still have functioning ovaries, but that's about the only silver lining I can find in this. It's been a fight every month over whether or not having a trash can for my wrapped supplies is sanitary. I've even tried wrapping them 3 times over and tucking to the bottom of the floss and tissues, which have ones that he has used. Ew, but it's still a fight. He wants me to walk it all the way out to the dumpster each time I have to change something out. I finally had enough and described the suffering of it in graphic detail to him. I'm a heavy bleeder and always have been, to the point that my anemia makes it incredibly hard to keep my balance on my heaviest and worst days. Cups fill in minutes. It's bad. I probably didn't need to be so graphic when I was explaining why exactly I needed this in here at least 1 week in a month. I feel like an asshole for that, but I don't think this is an unreasonable request. Everywhere I go, including his parents' and friends' houses, they have trash cans in their bathrooms. He has a mom and a sister who is 1 year younger than him. I feel like he should know something about this. Anyway, that's my scream to the void. So, am I the asshole for wanting a trash can in the only bathroom in our apartment? Another choral MC. I was in a rehearsal, as is my wont, and during the warm-ups, the conductor told us to sing do, re, mi, fa, so, et, cetera. At least half a dozen of us did, mostly the bass section, with gusto and aplomb. It turned out he actually wanted something a little more than just an ascending scale, so prompting him to give better instructions was necessary. Company said I can't park off property. Was told I can't park across the road from the company I work for. Been parking there for 15 years. Never been an issue with last 4 managers. New manager comes in and says I'm not allowed to park across the street on a side street easement. Manager even wrote up my supervisor for not writing me up for parking there. Don't screw over my elderly parents. Back in 2004 I came home from college to find my parents' driveway ripped up and unusable. My mom was in tears because the contractor had just informed her that the price of the project had gone up to double the original. Gave no reason to why it would now cost double. My parents were teachers in a shitty city in a poor state, so they didn't make a lot of money. It was through careful investments and savings that they moved to upper middle class. My parents lived in a nice neighborhood in this shitty city and worked hard their whole lives and took pride in their home. It wasn't an extravagant house by any means. It was a tri-level 70s Brady Bunch house in a city of 1-story adobe houses. Never renovated but well built and well maintained the 30 years they lived there. Contractors would often assume my parents were rich and try to squeeze them for money. So this is something we unfortunately have been dealing with my entire life. When this all happened they were retired and on a fixed income, so projects like this were thought out and prepared for carefully. My mom was beside herself with stress about the whole situation, but managed to keep it from me when I called every Sunday. So imagine how mad I was to learn about this situation. This particular contractor went out of his way to make the driveway a disaster area, and my 70 years old parents with mobility issues had literally been prisoners in their home for 2 weeks, unable to get through construction zone. The contractor had stopped all work until the full payment was made. My parents had already paid half of the first. Had drug out a straightforward job by only having 1 or 2 workers show up whenever they felt like it, work an hour and then leave. I had no idea while I was at school that this project had been going on for over a month. That semester at school I had taken a legal class from each area of study and had just written a paper on contract law. Within an hour of me getting home I had the contractor on the phone. To this day I don't know what came over me. It was like I was possessed by a ghost of a prosecuting legal shark. I insinuated but never specifically said that I was their lawyer. I threw out legal terms and accused them of being in breach of their bid and a legally binding contract, which fortunately had some language meant to cover their asses. Pointed to all the areas where they had violated their agreement and the obvious intentions to screw my parents. I had the contractor stuttering and stammering and promising to make the job a priority. When I got off the phone both my parents were staring at me in shock and made the statement I made earlier, that it was like I was possessed. Victory was won when the next morning at 6 a.m. a full crew of at least 5 guys plus contractor came and finished the job in 3 hours. Contractor never asked for the revised price and not even the second half of the first price. He just did the job and left. Didn't leave an invoice or address to send payment. Of course mom being mom tried to get in touch with him to make the second half of the payment, and he got so freaked out that she was going to sue him he dropped off a check for $1,000 from accounting errors and apologized profusely. Plus he left all the extra supplies that he over-purchased and had billed my parents for. It was enough that the following year when my father had to go from walker to wheelchair we had enough concrete and supplies to build a ramp. Damn, that felt good, and that one thing I could do for my parents after a lifetime of them sacrificing for me made my whole college education worth it to me. Moral of this: fuck with the elderly and give a daughter an education, she'll defend you from the wolves. Lol. Florida librarians with some amazing MC. Apparently DeSantis passed a law that forced schools to remove books with sexual content from their shelves, so the librarians have decided to remove even dictionaries to comply with the law fully. Funeral happening today. I received some shocking news last week that a man I used to be close with died very suddenly. The reason I say we used to be close is because a few years ago, He was sent to prison for grooming and abusing a teenage girl, which he pleaded guilty for due to huge amounts of indisputable evidence against him. There are rumors that this was not the first time that he had done this as well. After getting out of prison, he got married and had a kid, and apparently everyone just completely forgot that he's a sex offender. Don't get me wrong, I feel awful for his family. You can't choose family, and obviously they love him. But I am just so angry at everyone else. He was the kindest man I knew. Nobody had a bad word to say about him. Everyone loved him. God needed another angel. I feel like I'm going completely insane. Do people really have such short memories, or have they totally deluded themselves? I want and need more people to be as angry as I am. I almost died from fried rice syndrome. Hey, I'm here to raise some awareness because this shit is dangerous. So, me and my boyfriend were going to travel with a 2-day-long ferry. To avoid not to pay too much, we prepared food ourselves the day before going in. We cooked rice and forgot to put it in the fridge after it was done, and we left it overnight. The day after we packed the food and went on the ferry, we ate rice with other stuff throughout the first day, no problem. The second day at lunch though, 40 minutes or so after lunch, I started throwing. My whole stomach was out the first a liter. I sat on the toilet floor on the ferry and wondered why my boyfriend didn't check on me at first. Then I realized that he was probably throwing up as well. Then we both started throwing up blood. That has ever happened before. After a bit of Google, we think that we were probably very close to acute liver failure. There is a lot to read about fried rice syndrome online. Be careful with your roux, guys. Don't eat it if you're unsure and 40 hours in. The heat is too much for rice. I tried. I broke my wife and I don't think it is fixable. This happened 6 months ago, and I only chose to talk now because I don't see improvement in sight and I am hopeless. We were at a party. My friend is single and we started talking about love and relationships. My wife and I have been happily married for 7 years. We have 3 beautiful children. She is the love of my life. When I was talking to my friend, I felt like we were on different levels of thinking. His complaints are mostly superficial about how the people he dated looked. I was a bit drunk at that point and said something like, "You don't fall in love with looks. Look at me and my wife. I love her more than anything compared to my ex who was just looks." Everyone went silent, and my damage control was worse, so I ended up shutting the hell up. I couldn't get my point across, but even I thought that maybe these thoughts had been in my head but only came out when I was drunk. My wife was shocked. First week she was so angry and wanted to understand what I meant, and nothing I said was good enough. I was drunk. I love her. I think she's the most beautiful woman. She thought being drunk made me say my true feelings. Then one morning she just said, "You know, I have never felt as ugly as I have felt this past week. I have always thought I am beautiful." She didn't cry this time, but she hasn't been happy since. I started crying and apologizing, but she was like emotionless. It was the last time she looked at me too. She is taciturn and distant, but only with me. She has lost 20 pounds and she works out 6-7 days a week. She never has free time with me. If she's not with the children or her family and friends, she's immersed in some book or has her headphones on. She's always fully clothed now, even in bed. She locks the bathroom door when she takes a shower. She is more active on social media too. She shares many pictures of her, and she thanks everyone who gives her a compliment. Before, it was just pictures with our children and pets, but now it's her working out in sports bras and tights. I broke her and I don't know how to fix it. I evicted a sick tenant for non-payment. They died 2 days later. I own several rental properties, and have had lots of trouble collecting rent. A year and a half ago, I bought a 5-bedroom house that needed a lot of work. A homeless person begged me for a place to stay, and I told him that it wasn't in good condition, but he said he didn't care, and just needed anything. I turned the utilities on, and his brother and girlfriend moved in with him. I bought a new hot water heater that his brother was supposed to install. I felt bad hassling them on the rent, because of the condition of the place. They were supposed to work on the place, but never did any work. Last July things hadn't improved, so I wrote out a lease with them, so we had a written agreement. They were supposed to put the utilities in their name. They never did. Their rent was supposed to be $375 per month. They never paid it. I started trying to evict them several months ago, but never got the paperwork in. Then in November, they had an $1,100 water bill. I didn't find out until it was automatically withdrawn from my account in January. I lost it. I went over and yelled at them, and told them they needed to pay or I'd evict them. I called the utility company and had the water shut off because it was still in my name. I also got the paperwork filed. When I added up all the utilities and back rent, it was over $7,000 they owed. The eviction process had a couple of delays because of weird circumstances. The sheriffs were busy and didn't serve them for about a week and a half. Then there were holidays and bad weather. Eventually, last Thursday, the sheriffs went with me to move them out. The guy was sick and pale. He looked bad, and asked his girlfriend to get his walker. He stood there silently while the sheriff swept. the house and found his brother still inside. He watched me change the front door. I had finished changing the other locks. He was gone. Today, his brother knocked on my door and told me that he had died that Saturday. I basically killed him. I fought a petty territorial war over an empty flight seat and won. I boarded my 14-hour flight from LA to Shanghai and settled down in 62H. There were 4 seats in the middle of the plane, 62E, FGH. My 62H is the aisle seat on the right. On my left in 62E and F sat a mother in her 50s and a son college age. Between me and the mother there was 62G, empty. As boarding coming to an end, in rare chirpy mood, I leaned over and said to women, "Hope the person doesn't come so we both have more elbow room." No response. While she fluffed the synthetic little pillow in the empty seat, I didn't think much of it. As soon as boarding is complete was announced, to my surprise the woman moved to the empty seat next to me, effectively moving the elbow room from between us to between her and her son. The next thing I knew, she was pulling the upright armrest divider between us down. Still surprised, to her I said, "Why?" "More space for both of us with it up." She obliged in silence and the armrest stayed up. Still couldn't decide how upset I should be though. Flight took off and seatbelt sign came off. I reached for my shoes under the seat in the front. Imagine my outrage when my foot felt her foot in my area. "Oh woman, I see you woke up today and chose violence." One more attempt of diplomacy, as a good Asian woman who knows the virtue of filial piety that I was, i.e., your foot is in the way. Ai is Chinese honorific title for older women. My underlying message was, aren't you ashamed for behaving the way you do as an elder? ? She pretended she didn't hear me. This is war. Next I did what any red-blooded American would do. I complained to multiple flight attendants. One went to talk to her while I waited from not too far away. With that woman sitting steadily in that seat, I knew no justice was upheld. Flight attendant reported back apologetically, "The passenger said she has to sit there because there's something on her anus." Now, I failed to see the correlation between an empty seat and hemorrhoid, but the impartial judge was ineffective. I thanked the flight attendants plural because one intervened, and the other 2 handed me a cup of hot water and then a cup of hot tea. A much mummified, futile attempt to show I care and sat back down. At this point, I knew this street problem needed a street solution. You can't reason with someone who's willing to make up some anus problem just to win. My attempt earlier to shame her with the honorific title felt laughable. I'll just put my legs up on the seat when she gets up to go to the bathroom. I thought, easy. Oh, the sweet summer child that was me. For the next 12 hours, I repeat, 12 hours, she did not drink water, did not lift up ever so slightly from the seat. Nothing. She knew the consequences of getting up. She had done this before. This was not her first territorial war. I should add that she sounded perfectly normal, talking to her son, a caring and pleasant mother. Early on I heard the son say, "Mom, why don't you move back over?" And she went, "Nah, don't worry about it." Chirpy, like my mood before she ruined it. I tried everything to tempt her to. I got up to use the restroom liberally. Look at this freedom that you too could have. With the 2 cups I got from those flight attendants, I transferred water from one to the other. Listen to this trickling water sound. While she was sound asleep I turned on my overhead light. The bright beam just so happened to be slightly off-centered to her side. Waking her up felt good, but seriously, what was her bladder made of? Whatever it's made of wasn't turbulence-proof. After 15 minutes of genuinely terrifying turbulence, which probably led a much-needed reassessment about her life choices, she got up and headed to the restroom when the plane steadied. I put my legs up across the newly freed seat. The son watched me from the other end of the row, next to a seat full of little pillows, blankets, and other accessories they got to accumulate. He said nothing. The woman returned, and having seen me sitting across 2 seats, to my amazement she tried to sit down on my legs while murmuring, "My seat, I need to sit in my seat," to the airway above my head. This can't be happening. With the unexpected butt-to-leg contact, I collected myself and said, "Ye shame on you woman, you've been using this public seat for the past 12 hours. Don't you think it's now fair for me to put my feet up?" Still making no eye contact, she jerked to retrieval and started rearranging those pillows and blankets next to her son. "Fine, I'll make room for your feet. I'm not even feeling that well yet. I have to make room just so you can put your feet up. If your anus problem calls for 2 seats, you should have purchased 1 more. I'm afraid you didn't." As I talked she murmured, "Stop. Stop." And as my sentence finished she simultaneously shouted, "Stop talking." Everyone turned around to look at her. Somehow I thought this development was just the funniest thing and started laughing. It's been a week since my flight and I still couldn't stop wondering how she would have escalated had I kept talking. With my legs up on 62G, I had the best 2-hour nap of my life. I never saw them again after the flight. I wish my BF wiped after he peed. I've tried bringing it up and he just kinda laughed it off. Like it feels unhygienic, and I know most guys don't, but there's always a little dot of pee left behind. And like I don't want that in my mouth or well, in me. One time my BF was like, see, not a big deal. Then, when he put his pants on, there was a pee spot. A pee spot on his pants. BC he didn't wipe. I don't understand. BC I would never not wipe and expect him to go down on me. Also, my BF is nice, but every time I bring this up I can't be serious. BC like, we're talking about pee. So I get the idea he thinks I'm mostly joking. I am not. Need safety compliance ideas. Another department in my office has decided that the area behind my desk is a great place to store 30 large boxes of papers. It makes my area feel very cramped and cluttered, which is a huge distraction for me. What's a safety issue I could bring up so that management would force this group to store their crap elsewhere? The wife told me to stack the presents on the chair, so I did. Don't sneeze or Santa ain't coming this year. Want to play mailbox baseball? Fine, it will cost you one window. My sister lives in a more rural area and has recently been plagued with having her mailbox smashed in twice in 1 month. Someone was playing mailbox baseball and she was one of the victims. She asked for my help and was worried about staying within the law to protect herself. I told her that we could figure something out, so I went to Home Depot and purchased 2 identical steel mailboxes, the traditional kind with the rounded top. I took one mailbox and glued a layer of 1/16 foam underlayment to the inside. I filled it with concrete, making sure to add the appropriate rebar with a curved handle sticking out of the end. Once everything was set, I cut off the outer mailbox shell and used a torch to burn off the foam underlayment still stuck to the concrete. What was left was a slightly undersized concrete plug that would perfectly fit in the second mailbox and that could be inserted and removed. You see, my sister is afraid of snakes. By inserting the concrete plug into the mailbox at night, it would give her the peace of mind that a snake can't into her mailbox. I installed the second mailbox, informed my sister how the anti-snake concrete plug worked, and explained that the best time to put it in the mailbox would be at night. Strangely enough, one morning there was a mark on her new mailbox and a bunch of small glass pieces along the road. Hypothetically speaking, it was the kind of glass produced by someone swinging a baseball bat, having it bounce back off of a mailbox, and smashing a car window. On a positive note, her mailbox has remained snake-free. Wibta if I told my daughter's bio dad's wife not to call her stepdaughter? I had my daughter young. She is now 12 years old. Her bio dad was around for the first 1.5 years of her life. We split up when she was 1. Our relationship was extremely toxic. He was abusive and started using heavy drugs. He ended up in jail. When my daughter was 2, I met my now husband and he has been dad to her ever since. Bio dad was in and out of jail and still using for about 8 years. He is now out of jail and has been clean for 2 years now. Super proud of him in that aspect. He married a woman older than his mom. I say whatever floats your boat. I'm genuinely happy for them. In the time between getting out of jail and getting married, bio dad reached out and wanted another chance to get to know his daughter. I welcomed that openly, in agreement that it would be a very slow process. It's been about a year with contact once a week. It has gone well, minus a few bumps in the road involving his wife. I had sent bio dad pictures of my daughter. Bio dad's wife also had access to the pictures in the group chat. She went to a job interview that I just so happened to know the interviewer. After the initial interview, they were chit-chatting about life, kids, grandkids. Bio dad's wife pulls out her phone, shows it to the interviewer and says, "This is my stepdaughter." Mind you, this part is only about 2 months into bio dad getting to know daughter. I've met this lady one time and have only ever talked to her over text in the group chat. I felt that was inappropriate. Said something nicely to her. She threw a fit, pulled the "woe is me" card, blaming her reaction on her past. We ended up talking it out. She apologized, all was well. Fast forward to today. She shared a post and, in her caption, wrote, "My stepdaughter, insert whatever post." It really bothered me once again. To my daughter, she is a complete stranger. When it comes to titles like that, I feel like they are earned. I don't feel like she's done anything to earn that. She has never met my daughter in person and has only ever said hi to her over the phone once or twice. I don't want to cause unnecessary drama, but I do want to be open with the man. Express my feelings just as I would expect them to do if there was something bothering them. I haven't said anything to her this time, but I want to know, Wibta, if I did say something. You want my work? Have fun. A few years ago, I worked for a firm that consulted for small businesses. Not long after I joined, the firm was acquired and the new company did some shitty things to force my boss out against her will. We'll call her X. She was quickly picked up by a rival firm and subsequently began a personal vendetta to ruin us. I didn't think much of it at first, but it escalated to the point that everyone at the office knew X's name and what she was trying to do. A couple years after X left, A new board member wheel. Call him Y came into a company I was assigned to. Y repeatedly found non-existent problems, made me put together documents that he never looked at, and constantly complained about how I was doing a terrible job. Luckily, my manager knew my work was fine and had my back, but it was cutting into my time and energy to accommodate Y. This went on for months. Finally, Y convinced the other board members of my incompetence and they voted to fire us. They then signed a contract with X's firm. By then, I'd heard whispers through the grapevine that Y was friendly with X and wanted the company to switch to her new firm to get us to lose business. I was pissed. Y complained about my work for months, and he wasn't quiet about it. He made it seem like it was my fault. I put so many extra hours into that stupid company trying to appease him. And it turned out it didn't even matter, because he and X were out to get us. I was told to prepare my files for transfer to X's firm. Oh, I'll prepare them all right. Most of my work was in Excel. I couldn't touch the important info, but I had lots of things working behind the scenes. Formulas that updated info across multiple pages, automatic calculations, meticulous double-checking, all sorts of little tricks to make my work easier. Almost 2 years of continuous trial and error and adjustments. I deleted all of it. Whoever got the document had to manage almost 40 pages of numbers and legalese line by line. I'm sure they'll have their own system to smooth the process eventually, but it was undoubtedly massively inconvenient and time-consuming for whoever had to set all that up. Petty? Probably. Satisfying? Absolutely.